The Self-Care Learning and Discovery series is back, and it's bigger and bolder than ever. This is the premier self-care event of the year, bringing together self-care enthusiasts of all backgrounds and disciplines from around the world. The World Health Organization defines self-care as the ability of individuals, families, and communities to promote health, prevent disease, maintain health, and to cope with illness and disability with or without the support of a healthcare provider. We also know that self-care means different things to different people. What does self-care mean to you? You'll have ample opportunity to reflect on this question during the Discovery series, with more than 20 interactive virtual sessions organized by self-care experts worldwide. The Discovery series will elevate cutting-edge research, programming, and advocacy insights across a wide variety of self-care topics, and we encourage you to attend as many sessions as possible, especially on topics that may be new to you. The Self-Care Learning and Discovery series, a core activity of the Self-Care Trailblazer Group, is organized by the White Ribbon Alliance in partnership with co-sponsor organizations and esteemed steering committee members. We also want to thank all our session organizers and presenters who have voluntarily dedicated their time to curate this event with us. We are pleased to share that every session will offer live, simultaneous interpretation in French, Spanish, and English. To access the interpretation, simply navigate to your meeting controls located at the bottom of your screen. Click on the globe icon labeled Interpretation and select the language you'd like to hear. Joining from your phone, tap on the ellipses to find the interpretation feature and then select your language. Please note, you can switch languages at any time throughout the presentation. The session is now about to begin. Don't forget, whether you're working to influence policies or programs, advance universal health coverage, or improve your own self-care, we hope that you will take the learnings from today's discussion and apply it to your own work. To that end, we invite you to continue the conversation and take action with us by becoming a member of the Self-Care Trailblazer Group. So get curious, jump in, and share your ideas and insights with us. We look forward to advancing self-care together.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are calling in from around the world. Welcome to our closing plenary of the Self-Care Learning and Discovery series. We hope you have been able to join the series and have learned a lot throughout these 3 weeks of engagements. My name is Sarah Onyango. I work for PSI as a Senior Technical Advisor for Self-Care. I'm also the project lead and the Secretariat Director for the Self-Care Trailblazers Group. The Self-Care Trailblazers Group is proud to have been able to host this second series of our Self-Care Learning and Discovery series. And I want to start off by really acknowledging the great support we have had in organizing this series. Kudos to WRA, who have led the process, working in partnership with IHI. And we've had several volunteers from our Self-Care Trailblazers Group, the members who have supported what has resulted in a very successful event. I also want to just take a moment to acknowledge the moderators for the sessions, to acknowledge the participants throughout, the presenters, and most importantly, the translators. We managed to translate the entire series into both English and French. So welcome to this 1-hour session where we'll just be highlighting some of the achievements for the week and bringing this session to a close with pledges for going forward. So on the next slide, you have a brief agenda. Previous slide, please. Yes, so on our slide, this is the agenda for our session. We are going to start off by sharing some self-discoveries. We'll ask you to share with us what you have discovered throughout the session. We will then invite Martha Brady, who has worked closely with the Self-Care Trailblazers Group, to share with us some highlights from the State of the Self-Care Report and how we look forward to moving that report in the coming years. We then have an opportunity to invite you to make pledges about self-care going forward. And then we have two esteemed guests, Salome Nakawesi and Salome and Milka. They are both members of the Coalition Steering Committee. Salome is the able chair of the Coalition Steering Committee, and Milka represents the voices of Latin America and the Spanish-speaking group. So we're really excited to have them give us some words of advice as we close this session. Before I move on to the session where we want to hear from you, I just briefly want to talk about the Self-Care Trailblazers Group. The group is about 4 years old now and was established really with the main agenda of moving forward the self-care guidelines based or informed by the WHO guidance. We work in 4 outcome areas. One is to build the coalition, a strong coalition that is representative and that is diverse, that can help move the self-care agenda forward. Our second area of work is on creating awareness and building support for self-care. And this is this learning series is part of our broader vision to create awareness, share learnings and experiences as we move the self-care agenda forward. Our third area of work is to work towards institutionalizing policies and finances for implementing self-care, so that we move from policy, we move from the guidelines to actual implementation and ensuring that services are reaching those individuals who need them most. And then last but not least, we are committed to accountability from governments and ministries of health and other stakeholders to ensure that self-care is a critical part of universal healthcare. So we welcome you to join the Self-Care Trailblazers Group, and you'll see throughout the session some opportunities where you can join the Self-Care Trailblazers Group. Next slide, please. This slide just shows you the amazing 3 weeks we have had. So for 3 weeks, we have had a total of 19 dynamic sessions looking at self-care from an advocacy lens, from a program lens, and also the wide range of research that's going on around self-care. And the sessions were cross-cutting from addressing areas of service delivery, contraception, HIV, but also looking at areas like menstrual health and menstrual hygiene. We did look at some innovative activities that people are doing, things like pills by post, or even just the work around telemedicine. So it's been a 3-week packed with information, learning, and opportunities for moving this agenda forward. We know that we had lots of sessions happening concurrently, and maybe you didn't have a chance to join all these sessions. We will be sharing the recordings at the end and hope that you can have another chance to listen to any interesting sessions that you missed. So we'll go forward and start inviting you to engage with us in this closing plenary that we hope will provide some good steps for us to move ahead. So to start off with, we did reach out to you at the beginning of this series to ask what it was you were looking forward to in the series. And that slide shows us some of the thoughts you had. You wanted to get connections with others. You were looking at addressing some areas such as self-managed abortion, or looking at self-care programming, issues around women empowerment. So yes, we have highlighted some of the key areas that you are looking at, and we hope that the sessions have been able to address these for you. Next, please. So we've also been tracking and asking what you wanted to do what you found from the sessions itself. And these few bullets just highlight some of the comments we've received from you. The sessions have been most enlightening. People felt that it was a great and fruitful interaction. Someone says this was my first engagement with the HCD team, and they really enjoyed the sessions. So we're getting a lot of positive responses from you. It's been a great session. From the Self-Care Learning and Discovery series this year, we're aware that a learning platform is a very valued platform for everyone. And so we urge you to continue sharing your feedback from these sessions, and we hope that this will help us build our work going forward. So yeah, next slide, please. So now we have, we'd like to invite you to actively take part in this next session. So if we'd like to ask you to go to the Mentimeter, we have a link provided there. If you could go to the Mentimeter and enter that code. And the question we are asking you, sorry, I do blocked. We're asking, the question we're asking you, I'm having challenge with my series. So what did you learn during the Self-Care Learning and Discovery series? So grateful if you could provide us with your response. What did you learn during the Self-Care Learning and Discovery series? So we'll give you a few moments to do that, and then we'll look at your responses and share them. Thank you. So I can see we are already getting some responses. There were so many amazing partners doing incredible work. Somebody feels that they have a better understanding of the definition of self-care. Menstrual regulation, that came out as an interesting session with misoprostol to bring back late periods, so that's fascinating. Somebody says we need to prioritize the self-articulated needs of women and girls. Yes, please continue sharing your thoughts. I learned that most countries are already practicing some form of self-care. Yes, we know that self-care is not new. It's something that's been with us for generations and for centuries. What is happening at this point is we're becoming more structured and really focusing on how self-care can help advance sexual and reproductive health and rights. Yes. There are more people in the room. We'd love to see your responses. If you're having problems accessing the Mentimeter, please, you can put your comments in the chat. But we'd like to hear from you what have been some of your greatest learnings during this session. Okay, I think we have saturated the contributions. I'd really encourage you to continue sharing what you have learned and how we can use that to advance the self-care work going forward. I'll move on to the next session, but as I've said, while this is going on, don't hesitate to continue filling the Mentimeter form, which is live and available throughout the session. So I'd like to take this opportunity now to invite Martha Brady to speak to us about the State of Self-Care report and what we envisage our plans for it going forward. So Martha is the lead consultant that helped us with preparing the last State of Self-Care report. Martha is a global health professional with over 25 years of experience as a strategist, a technical advisor, and an evaluator of sexual and reproductive health. She has been involved in self-care work, working around adolescent health and well-being. Martha has a long career in sexual and reproductive health and rights, spanning across many organizations, and she holds a master's degree from the University of Columbia. So I'd like to invite Martha to spend the next couple of minutes to take us through the State of Self-Care Report, an essential part of our documenting our progress in self-care and how we can move that discussion forward. Over to you, Martha.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for joining. Before I go on, I'm going to be brief, but I wanted to pick up on the Mentimeter. I wanted to just ask. I'm going old school. I've been a researcher for many years, so I like what I call the kindergarten methodology of research, which is I'm going to ask a couple questions, and if the answer is yes, just raise your hand or turn on your screen or write a thumbs up. Okay, ready? Question number one. Did you participate in 4 or more sessions of the self-care series? If the answer is yes, you can turn on your machine, just turn on your picture or do a thumbs up or something. So just want to get so there's several people, thumbs up, good. Okay, okay. Next question. So that represents, if you did 4 or more sessions, that represents 25% of the overall self-care series. So, and I'm sure many have done many more, but I just like to do my little numbers game. Okay, the next question is, raise your hand or give a thumbs up. And I think this last point, Sarah, you've already captured it, but did you learn something new? Okay, so from the self-care series. So I think everyone says yes to that. Next question is, did you meet someone new that you didn't know before? Okay. And then my final question is, in this overall series, did something you heard or learned about make you smile, make you feel inspired or happy? I'd like to see a show of hands on that one. Okay. All right, those are my little things. I'll go on to now the creating the next State of Self-Care report. So next slide, please. Okay, so just to remind people, we worked on it was published in 2023, but it was worked on actually as much as 2022, the State of Self-Care report, progress and potential. Just to remind you, you can look in the link for those who might have missed it. It was the first State of Self-Care report, which launched during the self-care month in July. We had more than 50 individuals contributed to reports as authors and reviewers. And at the time, the case examples drawn from a variety of settings and types of interventions, they focus primarily around self-care interventions in terms of the tools. So you can see the list here. Those were the case studies we focused on for that first self-care report. Many of which are still being worked on, obviously, but I just wanted to point that out. Next slide, please. Also, at the time, we had this divided into 4 chapters. And I think this is still a rich resource that people can use. So those are the 4 chapters we had made the report in. And I would just encourage you to look at those. Next slide, please. And just a couple of messages. There were lots of interesting findings, but a couple of key messages I just like to remind ourselves about. That again, the practice of self-care is long-standing and universal, yet not formally integrated to health systems in many settings. We know that it has contributions to UHC, and it does provide the foundation for primary health care. That global and country advocacy plays a critical role in socializing the concepts of self-care and the constructs, and also creating that enabling policy and legal environment. We've seen that the development of multi-sectoral national self-care networks to advance self-care policy is a very promising approach, and there's lots of work being done on that score. And finally, we also know that investment is needed to ensure that these self-care interventions, including literacy across a range of health systems, contribute to outcomes that we can measure. So those were there are many other messages, but I just want to give you some that we drew from the last report. Next slide. And I just want to put this here is where we left off. The areas where we highlighted that needed continued action, and I'm delighted to know that actually we've seen that in this series, we've seen a lot of this, that expanding to include a broader set of self-care interventions was absolutely a point that we wanted to make. And I can see that in this series, we've expanded both within the health, but also non-health specific self-care interventions, including mental health, including climate resilience, et cetera. We also noted at the time the importance of documenting effective approaches from going from pilot to scale in tandem with evidence generation. And I think that still holds true. We had highlighted the importance of streamlining the monitoring, evaluation, research, learning, the MERL section, because there's many different streams of evaluation going on, and some way to streamline this in the overall self-care concept, I think, is important. Again, we highlighted the need for generating evidence around cost and cost effectiveness. And I know there's an entire financing working group on this, and that lots of work has happened since this report, but that was something we noted, and it'll be good to include that moving forward. We mentioned the importance of getting a deeper understanding of the behavioral dimensions of self-care. And I think this is an area that we have worked extensively on in this past year, and will remain, I think, a critical piece to the self-care agenda. At the time, we highlighted the importance of defining and constructing financing strategies for self-care. We know at this moment in time, there's enormous energy around domestic resource mobilization at country level. And so how the financing of self-care can be embedded into existing structures and work. And then another point that came up, which I think still holds true, is ensuring sustainability of both self-care products and tools, and sustainability of self-care programming, right? And so that speaks to, I think, the localization agenda and also to financing. And then finally, somehow it isn't appearing on my screen, but the last point, I don't know if you can pull that up, but actually continuing research collaboration. Those were areas we left off in our the first series, the first state of self-care, and I hope we can address some of them moving forward. Next slide. So creating the next state of self-care report in 2024, the why, what, who, and how. So we believe the evidence is continuing to build, and we need to capture that and consolidate that learning and the best practices. We hope that this will still take stock of the country and global evidence and serve as a resource. So compiling these experience and evidence and reference in the frameworks. We see this as a tool for ministries of health, program implementers, researchers, anyone who's involved in designing, implementing, researching, or advocating for self-care programs. So how we're going to do it this time, we were attempting to set up an interdisciplinary task team to guide the work. And we want it to be really participatory and member-driven process. So next slide. So what we're looking for is to create this interdisciplinary task team to lead this effort of a state of self-care version 2.0, right? So the tasks really will be to determine the thematic areas that the report should address, to develop an approach for identifying a broad and diverse constituency for consideration of case studies, providing some technical guidance on case study structure, length, etc. Define a process for a systematic assessment of the submissions, and then serve as reviewer for individual case studies. We are looking for this task team this is all voluntary participation, but we do want to ensure that the task team members can participate in key meetings regularly throughout calendar year of 2024, provide written feedback on the report as it's being drafted. So those are kind of just generally that kind of role that we see this task team to play. Next slide, please. So we're seeking volunteers, and we want to, we want a range of individuals, probably 8 to 10. We haven't defined exactly yet, but that have some self-care experience and technical expertise. We want a diverse set of skills, including sort of policy advocacy folks and implementation science researchers, writers who can write for different audiences. We want language skills, French particularly, also Milka Spanish, but I think we want a particular need more French language capacity here. We're looking for a range of geographies and institutions to fill these roles. And here's some examples of the types of roles or positions. So next slide, please. How? Okay, so next, what to do. So we're really encouraging members to apply to be a task team volunteer. please look for an announcement coming up from this Self-Care Trailblazers group detailing the process and the application. We will then be selecting a group to form this task team, and we'll want to be applications coming in the end of this year, early next year, and set the team by, Sarah, you can correct me, but set the team by early 2024. And then the work itself of pulling this report together will take place during 2024. We hope that you connect with colleagues and peers about your work and see whether the work that you're doing might be an interesting case study. And we also ask, I don't know how many different organizations we have on the line, but if your organization would like to co-create or co-sponsor this State of Self-Care Report version 2.0, we'd love to hear from you. Please be in touch with the Self-Care Trailblazers group. I think that was it. The next slide. Yeah, just any more questions, any specific questions? Next slide, please. Yeah, just, I could reach out to Sarah or others at the STGG. So if there's any questions about anything I said, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martha, for taking us through the State of Self-Care report. We think this is a key document that we'll be developing going forward. And here's your chance to participate. So thank you for that presentation, Martha. Any questions to Martha? You can raise your hand or you can put them in the chat. As Martha has said, we'll be looking for volunteers. We'll be looking for case examples from you. So any opportunity to bring the work that you are doing so that we can include it in this report will be most welcome. I see a hand up from Kimberly. Please go on, Kim.
Sure. Thank you so much, Martha, for that really excellent overview. It's not a question, but just a comment, just to say that I had the honor of being on the task team for with the individuals who helped develop the 2023 report. And it was just a really enriching experience, being able to help shape, but also to learn from others when we were curating the content and the interesting examples, promising practices, and some of the latest evidence. So it was definitely a worthwhile endeavor and really encourage others to participate. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, any others with questions? There's a lot going on and we do want to capture as much of it as possible. So we can't reiterate this more. We really welcome your participation at any of the levels that Martha has shared today. Great, I see no hands up. So we'd like to move on to the next part of the meeting, and we'd like to hear from you or call on you to let us know what pledges you are planning to make to help advance self-care based on what you've learned from the series. So we'll go back to our Mentimeter again. And on the screen, there's the link to the Mentimeter and the code. We just want you to go in there and share with us your self-care pledge about how you will take the learnings that you have from from the 3 weeks of the self-care learning and discovery series forward in your work. So please, like to encourage all of you to put a pledge. We will not hold you accountable to it, but we will use it to inform our work as a Self-Care Trailblazers group. If you're having challenges with getting into the Mentimeter, feel free to use the chat platform to add your pledge. So a few minutes for that. As advocates, as activists, as major coalition members for self-care, oh, there we go. Thank you very much. So the first response we have wants to encourage inclusion of a self-care focus within the humanitarian settings. Yes, so that's a very critical part of our areas of work in self-care. And some sessions during the 3 weeks did look at self-care in humanitarian settings. So let's continue to have that as a guiding pledge. Any others? Thank you. Remember to tailor interventions and programs to local communities. Absolutely. This is not external, but we really want to be answering to the needs of the communities. We love the idea of employers instituting wellness Fridays or staff wellness days at work. This was a best practice presented at the permission to take care of ourselves. So yes, self-care is beyond just self-care for SRHR. I know we've had some exciting sessions looking at wellness and bringing this to the workplace. Somebody wants to see how they can bring self-care learnings to work and home more often. Yes. We'll continue to work on access and affordability of quality maternal, sexual, and reproductive health supplies so that all people can take care of their own SRH in a framework of free choice and rights. So really pushing the agenda for equity, for access, and women's rights. Yes, my French is at 0, so I apologize about the French one. Any French speaker who might want to help with that? Okay, so I
can do it.
Yeah, please do.
Contact au niveau ministériel. The person says to have contact at the Ministry of Health level, I suppose.
Thank you very much. Yes, we've had that coming out a lot, the need to engage with the ministries of health to make sure that self-care becomes an integrated part of the health system. So thank you for that contribution. Any more thoughts or ways that we want to commit to moving self-care forward? Yes, so expand the learnings on self-care to nutrition and persons with disabilities. Yes, we have spoken a lot about self-care in SRHR, but we're hearing this more and more from our network members, the need to go beyond SRHR and to address other areas of health, including non-communicable diseases, nutrition, etc. So thanks for that pledge. Convince service providers that self-care is the way of the future and that it is evidence-based. That's again something that we're really working on, and our continuous contributions, our continuous learnings through this series, through the work that Martha has shared, and through other webinars that we'll be holding with all our stakeholders will be instrumental in us convincing our service providers that self-care is a way for the future and an essential part of the health provision system. Yeah, thank you. Maybe 1 or 2 more, and then we can wind up. Thank you. I think from my side, I'm looking, I'd like to just see us as a coalition, as a group of stakeholders, increase awareness about self-care so that it becomes an institutionalized part of our health system, and that we have the support of key stakeholders, especially health providers, the private sector, and others. So yeah, thank you, everybody. And again, although I want to move to the next session, I'll encourage you to continue writing any pledges as you think about them, and we'll include them in our final capture of this closing series. And so now I'd like to move on to invite our keynote speakers for the closing session. I have, as I mentioned, we have 2 speakers who are very important people for the self-care, So our first speaker is Salome. Salome is, Salome is the current chair of the Self-Care Trailblazers group, and she is going to take us through her remarks around this closing session, and specifically to link up with the work that we do as part of the Coalition Steering Committee. So I'd like to welcome you, Salome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I can't say good night because it's a time that we're closing a very exciting last few days. I take the opportunity on behalf of the Self-Care Trailblazer Group Coalition Steering Committee to welcome you all to this closing panel, but more importantly, to appreciate all the hard work. You've done a lot of hard work, but also more importantly, a lot of learning and unlearning. Personally, I attended some sessions, but each of the sessions, actually, I would feel like running from one session to another. They were so insightful. A lot had to be learned, but also a lot of work is being done. So in terms of my closing remarks, I'd like to take us to the summary of what some of my observations, but also some of the aspirations that the steering committee has, and also some of the key areas that we feel are important for us to carry us forward. The first one is around really our perspectives about self-care. From the series, you'd see a lot of work is being done, but also there's a lot of expansion around self-care, moving away from SRHR predominantly to also looking at our own institutional culture. When we hear people talking about wellness and then self and collective wellness within the organizations, and then also about how we've grown self-care beyond SRHR to really look at other issues and also the contestations that we have there. As a coalition, we are still having our foot in, our foot out, but also realizing and acknowledging that women, people do not live single issue lives, that there is so much intersectionality in the kind of lives they lead, but also in the kind of issues that they pursue, which means that our interventions and also the work that we do has to have an intersectional approach. The second key component is about the mass amount of work. One of the things that came to our minds as we are listening in to all this, but even also when we are seeing the sessions, was so much information that we have out there, but even also the need to create spaces where we are sharing this information. Actually, I kept sitting here and I'm saying, oh, wait a minute, this is also happening. That is happening. So there is a lot of information that we have. And a key challenge that we have as the steering committee and as secretariat is to make sure that how do we create more spaces like these ones, where there's a lot of sharing and learning, where we are garnering and also harnessing the power of technology for us to be able to share the things that are happening, where we are learning from each other, but also where we are co-creating new alternatives so that we can be innovative, but also we can be sustainable in the kind of work that we do. The third key component of my closing remarks is really around why we do this self-care. One of the things that ran through some of the sessions that I was part of, but even also I attended one of the sessions that was earlier than this, was really around projectizing self-care. And the need for us to have this as one of the things that people own in, there's legitimacy, women, communities, young people owning in, because that is part of us sustaining our work, but also part of us being cognizant that projects have a lifespan and we can't subject self-care to projectization and really running as a project. So therefore, that is one of the key challenges that we have. But also it's one of the things that came out clearly that we need to walk the journey and define other alternatives that can make self-care sustainable. And then also another thing that came out very clearly is that there's been initiatives to bridge the gap between state and non-state actors, between communities and activists, between funding agencies and recipients, between international NGOs, local NGOs, community groups. So that shows the weave that's happening. And that shows the fact that self-care is increasingly becoming something that is not a matter of luxury or very complicated, but is something that people are willing to walk the journey and walk it together. And then another key component that my closing remarks would look at is around resourcing. And this is a discussion we've had at the steering committee. How do we resource this work? How do we resource it in a way that is sustainable? We resource it in a way that allows us to look at it that this is our issue, but more importantly, for us to expand the funding base beyond the donor funding model. And I know that is a huge challenge. We also all struggle with it. How do we do it in a way that is sustainable? So that is one of the things that we've moved with, but also I've seen it in terms of the key recommendations, how we define resourcing models that expand beyond the donor funding model, but also that are sustainable. And also how do we take back the resourcing to happen at the national levels, where we are seeing a lot of the work that is being done, especially at the national levels where we have the self-care national self-care networks. And then lastly is about really the living in the now. One of the things that is happening with the world population is that we are having a youth dividend. We are having many young people. That is an opportunity, but at the same time, it's a challenge for us to keep up to that pace, especially people like us who are in the afternoon of our lives. And therefore, what are some of the key areas that we need to look at moving forward? A, how intersection is our work? 2, how do we finance this work without feeling that it is taking away the power from the people it's supposed to? But also, how do we sustain self-care work? Those are challenges. They're not questions not to answer, but to work with. And lastly, how do we have these conversations localized? How do we have the legitimacy of the communities, the women, the young people, the girls, people that whose lives self-care should be benefiting better? How are they part of the decision-making? And of course, lastly, how do we expand across various sectors beyond health, beyond SRHR, to look at self-care and connect with contemporary issues? And I know there was a session I attended that was looking at climate justice, that was looking at adaptation, and how do we allow ourselves to fuse into that? And of course, lastly, I'd like to appreciate you all on behalf of the steering committee and appreciate our conveners of this series. We've learned a lot. More importantly, we have learned a lot and connected with so many other people. And of course, lastly, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Milka to also challenge us and also share her closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Salome. And and thank you, Salome, for handing over to Milka. But I just wanted to briefly mention, that Salome is an activist and has done a lot of work to advance sexual rights, human rights, abortion rights, and is a real voice and a pillar for us on the African continent. So we value and appreciate the work that you do globally, but also the direct support that you give to the Coalition Steering Committee. And before Milka gets in, just to mention that Milka, again, a member of our Coalition Steering Committee, has a long-standing experience in development, in health and development, and is currently working with the Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition as regional manager and the MHS caucus of the coalition. We value Milka's presence in the Coalition Steering Committee. One of our aims is to ensure that members of our steering committee are diverse, represent diverse groups, whether they're geographical diversity, whether it's technical diversity or other areas. And Milka does bring us a strong voice from Latin America that we really want to build to move the discussions around self-care forward. So Milka, over to you for your closing remarks.
Thank you, Sarah. Gracias, Sara. Y buenos días, buenas tardes a todas y todos. Yo voy a hablar en castellano para todas las personas que hablan castellano. Es un gran gusto estar con ustedes el día de hoy como parte del comité directivo del grupo de trabajo en autocuidado. Y también es un gusto estar con ustedes como latinoamericana. Como dijo Sara, soy Milka Dine, gerenta de regiones y de salud materna de la Coalición Global para Insumos de Salud Reproductiva. Muchos lo conocen por sus siglas en inglés RHSC. Primero, quisiera agradecer a todas las personas que han venido participando en estos talleres y webinarios sobre autocuidado. Hemos aprendido una lección muy dura durante la pandemia, que el autocuidado de la salud es primordial para vivir una vida sana y en plena forma. Esta comunidad de práctica que hacemos todos nosotros es justamente un mecanismo estupendo para mantenernos al día con lo último en autocuidado. Por eso quisiera invitarles a participar más activamente, difundir entre sus redes e incrementar nuestra membresía. Todas y todos son bienvenidos. Asimismo, es indispensable mencionar que el autocuidado es un elemento importante para que nuestros países puedan lograr los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenibles, los ODS. Estamos aún bastante atrasados en alcanzar algunos de ellos, en especial los de salud y educación. Por eso es importante que mantengamos la mira en asegurar que dichos objetivos se cumplan al año 2030. Y el autocuidado es parte esencial de dicho logro. Asimismo, el autocuidado es un elemento crucial en el aseguramiento universal en salud. Hemos visto en estos días todas las presentaciones que han tenido que ver con el tema de aseguramiento. Es indispensable que sigamos empujando esa agenda. Estoy particularmente complacida de ver cómo América Latina puede aportar a nuestro movimiento desde el autocuidado y las vías digitales, particularmente en el caso de la interrupción de embarazos no deseados y la autogestión de la interrupción. El acompañamiento digital ha sido un elemento que ha cambiado radicalmente las relaciones entre el servicio de salud y los usuarios. Son lecciones de nuestra región, de América Latina, que podemos compartir con el mundo. Las sesiones de autocuidado de adolescentes nos han demostrado que el autocuidado es solo posible con una educación sexual integral, una educación para la salud y la vida, donde los jóvenes puedan ser actores de su propia salud y puedan tomar decisiones informadas que van a afectar el resto de sus vidas. Me encanta también el trabajo que se hace con la autoaplicación del inyectable trimestral. En agenda queda pendiente ver el tema de los precios de la medroxiprogesterona subcutánea, que aún sigue siendo muy cara, especialmente para nuestros países de América Latina. Asimismo, debemos seguir trabajando con el tema del involucramiento de los proveedores de servicios de salud y hacerles conscientes que el autocuidado es una forma de colaborar en el éxito de su trabajo y que no está designado para ser una competencia o una intrusión, una inclusión en sus responsabilidades, que son muchas y muy importantes y que el autocuidado no las reemplaza. Quiero terminar invitando a todos a seguir acompañando el trabajo del Self-Care Trailblazer Group. El comité directivo, del cual soy parte, está a su disposición para escuchar recomendaciones y sugerencias. Somos un movimiento global y sigamos apoyando. Muchas gracias. Gracias, Sara. Salomé, gracias.
Yeah, thank you so much, Milka, for those remarks, and to both of you for really bringing out key issues. I think Salome really mentioned some key questions that we need to be thinking about, whether it's around ensuring a multisectoral approach, engaging young people, looking at issues of resourcing of self-care. These are all really key questions that we must address and continue to address to move this discussion forward. And Milka, I think I really picked the links with the SETG and the universal health coverage. So we want to position self-care at the global and at the country level and bring out the importance of linking it to our achieving these critical goals that many of our countries have committed to at various levels. So we are coming to the close of this session. Next slide, please. And the next slide. I believe our main ask here is to give you the opportunity to engage more. As Milka has indicated, the Self-Care Trailblazers Group is a global coalition. We welcome participants from every part of the globe. from every language, from every country. We haven't reached there yet, so we encourage you to share this opportunity with your colleagues and those that you engage with. We have a lot of information that you can get from our website, and it'll be also an opportunity to learn more and share with others. So a big call out to join our coalition if you're not a member, but also to share it out with others who have not yet joined it. And before closing out, I see Kim's hand up, so I'll allow Kim to just give us some guidance on some of the way forward. Yeah, Kim, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I know you're closing us, but I just wanted to jump in briefly because we have been getting questions from participants about, will I get the recordings? Can I get the presentation? So I just wanted to address that briefly here. So the answer is yes. Next week, though, everyone who registered for the Self-Care Learning and Discovery Series will get an email. Again, thanking you for your participation, asking you to take a brief survey to evaluate the series as a whole, and also letting you all know that the recordings and the presentations and e-certificates are coming. So our aim is in early to mid-December to, we're going to do a couple things. First, for every individual session, we have those registration lists. So we will follow up with everyone who registered for each session to send the slides, to send the session recording, which at present time will be available. That recording will be available in English, French, and Spanish. And then our goal is eventually to migrate those recordings onto the SCTG website so that you can go back and access those recordings and presentations there. And then we're also working with Impact for Health, who will be putting together some e-certificates. So for those of you who registered and participated in the series, a digital certificate will be coming your way. Hoping to do that by mid-December before we break for the holidays. So just wanted to take the time to answer those questions here in plenary, just because we are hearing it over and over. And to me, that's a testament to how much the information, the evidence, the learnings are really resonating. People are really hungry for this information. So, and just while I have the floor, as someone who was one of the lead organizers of this series, I just really want to thank all of you. I want to thank the SCTG Secretariat for supporting and investing in this, Impact for Health for being such a core organizer. We had fabulous steering committee members who helped shape, advise, and guide the series as a whole. We had what I'm calling MVPs, from Liz Bayer to Martha Brady to others who just provided a lot of support in individual capacity. Our interpreters did a fantastic job, some of the best interpretation I think I've heard at any virtual event. So really this, let me also not forget our session organizers, our presenters who really helped curate these sessions. This was a true cross-coalition effort, a real all-hands-on-deck effort, and I think the series was truly a success thanks to all of our collective work. So thank you, Sarah, for allowing me to kind of come in and just say a few things before we close. I'll pass the baton back to you.
Yeah, before we close, and I think we are done, thank you very much. I see a couple of questions coming in from Mohammed Saeed. Mohammed, I hope I've got your questions right, but just want to say that the Self-Care Trailblazers group is a coalition. It's literally the equivalent of a self-care working group. So I encourage you to join it. We have platforms for advocacy. We have platforms for evidence and learning, and definitely a place where you can share and also learn from others. So please join if you're not a member yet. And to close now, I really want to thank you all, those of you who've been able to join us today at this closing plenary. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for participating in our Mentimeter polls. And thank you to our keynote speakers, both Milka and Salome, for making this a really worthwhile event. We look forward to replicating this activity in another 2 years, and we'll keep working with you as we build that next session of the Self-Care Learning and Discovery series. So have a good rest of your day, your evening, your morning, or night, wherever you are, and thank you. Thank you all.